Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing? We are in the bus. We are now in Ocala, Florida. I think this is week 3 of 7 weeks on the road, 8 weeks on the road. So we still got a little ways to go on our trip, having a great time meeting with people, hearing other people's stories of invention and innovation. We had a really exciting visit a week ago up at the Mayo Clinic. I've done a bunch of co-innovation work with Mayo over the years, so I got to take a tour of the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, to see what they are doing around healthcare of the future, and we will be sharing some of those stories in the future. Today's show is one that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and I've been collecting my list that makes up today's show. The list that I'm sharing are the 10 inventions that I would uninvent. That's right. If I had the magic wand, what 10 inventions would I uninvent? Meaning I could go back in history, I had a time machine, I had some way to go back and prevent something from being invented. This is really taking a look at history to kind of see the history of an idea and where did it possibly go wrong. Where was its use resulted in something that was negative, that unintended consequence? So again, today's show is me sharing with you the 10 inventions that I would invent. Well, let's not delay any longer, and let's jump into today's episode. As innovators, we should always look past the excitement that we have for our idea. We have all this excitement coming up about how this idea, how this innovation is going to change the world, change people's lives, change our organization. But there's a question we should always ask ourselves, and that is, what would be the unintended consequences from this idea? What are the ways that this idea could be used in unintended ways? Now, some of those can be positive, but some of those can be negative. Now, I've talked about this in the past in the context of ethical innovation. And as innovators, we take the burden. When we invent something, we own the burden of thinking through how our idea could be misused. Now, rather than talking about the theoretical of what should you do in the future, or how could your idea be misused in the future, I want to take a look at the past. And I want to list inventions, innovations that I would uninvent if I could, and why I would do that. It's not as simple as saying that an idea is good or bad and you just put them on either side of a list. Because most, if not all, innovations can be both good and bad. And it's important as innovators that we go in with our eyes wide open. And be one way to help us think about our own inventions, our own innovations that we're working on now, is to look to the past. Look to what happened historically. And if we could rewind the clock, what would we have done differently? So, let's hop in. Now, these are not in any kind of ranked prioritized order. These are just the list of inventions that if I had the magic wand, that I would uninvent. And one of those inventions that I would love to uninvent are robocallers. So these are those callers that are trying to sell you maintenance contracts on your automobiles, telemarketing campaigns, selling you resort timeshares, and all of those things, right? Robocallers have become the real problem. And in fact, at our office, where our employees are getting anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 calls a day from robocallers. Now, robocalling is the result of innovation. Telephone systems going all digital, voice over IP, which allows for computers to generate calls, is what opened up the door for the invention of robocalling. Now, the inventors of voice over IP did not think about the fact that their voice over IP could be misused. Now, you could write some software very easily on a PC or even on a computer or a server, and you could generate thousands and thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of calls simultaneously and go annoy the heck out of everybody. Now, one of the ways that this was enabled is not just the invention of voice over IP, but the fact of regulators. Regulators were not able to keep up with this innovation. Could the innovators or could the regulators have kind of shut that down by making it illegal earlier and faster? You bet. However, one of the side effects is politicians love robocalling. They love calling their constituencies leading up to elections to tell them their position on certain political activities or get them out to vote. So while the politicians love it, they also would want to regulate it, but they want it to be regulated so that they can still be the ones that are allowed to do robocalling. So if I could uninvent and have the magic wand, one of those inventions that I would uninvent would be robocalling. The next one is the atomic bomb. Now, atomic energy and the use of the atom for medicine, those have all been phenomenal inventions. This is a perfect example of where something is good and something is not so good. The atomic bomb, the use of those as weapons, now being used as deterrents. If I could have a magic wand, I would keep the use of atomic sciences for things like medicine and energy, but I would get rid of the atomic bomb. So, depending on where your opinion is on military use of innovation, you may have a different opinion, but if I could have the magic wand, I would get rid of the atomic bomb. The next one is speed cameras or red light cameras. So these are the cameras that municipalities post up on traffic lights or down the middle of streets, and they clock you, they snap your picture, and they automatically send you the ticket. Now, there has been a good result of this. One is it has increased safety, right? So people slow down in those areas. But many of the GPS systems like Waze and those will tell you when you're coming up on a red light camera or a speed camera, and you adjust your speed accordingly. So does it really help? Who knows? But that same technology is used for things like license plate tolls. So when you're driving down highways, rather than needing to go through toll booths, it snaps the picture of your license plate and it automatically mails you your bill. I love that. I'm traveling. We are actually in the bus. We are in Florida, and the Florida Turnpike has pay by plate, which means I don't have to stop. I don't have to have exact change or dollars in the case of something as big as having 5 axles going down the highway and paying that toll. They can just mail me the bill. The flip side is these have been misused. Many companies have approached municipalities saying that we will install the cameras for free, we will install the red light cameras for free and the speed cameras, and we'll split the tolls that you get. So the municipalities don't have to pay for installing them or maintaining them, and businesses get to make money off of, you could argue, illegal activities. Some of these corporations have been caught maybe snapping the picture a little too soon. Maybe the light is still yellow, but it snaps the picture and gets you on running a red light, when in reality, the light was still yellow. And there's been a number of these. So there's also the role of, could an innovation be used unethically from the standpoint of creating conflict of interest? Could there be an incentive to do bad things with an innovation? The fourth one on my list is social media. Now, this one actually I came across on Reddit, and people have been commenting about social media and the negative effects of social media. I would argue that social media in many cases turns into an echo chamber. People hang out with, talk with people just like them, think like them, have the same beliefs like them, and it turns into an echo chamber. And in effect, amplifies based on some algorithm that says, oh, you like that, Joe likes that, we'll put you and Joe together and we'll let you share each other's post or whatever. And you get this kind of amplification effect of opinions, etc. And I think social media in that context, using algorithms to amplify those kinds of messages, it's just a bad thing. I think it's a misuse of communities. It's a misuse of friendships. It's a misuse of having insight into people that nobody in previous generations has ever had access to. So I think it's a misuse of data and it's a misuse of information. And I think social media as a means of just sharing family photographs, etc. Thus, why I spending more and more of my time on Instagram and less of my time on things like Facebook. So I primarily think about, when I think about social media and places where I spend most of my time, that is on LinkedIn, it's on Instagram, and it's over at the Innovators community. Because those are sites where you don't get that manipulation of, I'm going to try to artificially put things in your feed. And LinkedIn is much more professional. It's less political, etc. Instagram, it's more about the imagery, photographs, sharing, those types of things. And the Innovators community, that's where I hang out. And it's basically other innovators. And it's about ideas and how do we help each other's ideas, become better. And so that's where I tend to spend. I am pulling away from social media that I think can have a negative effect. Number 5 on my list is cigarettes or tobacco. Now, this one's a hard one for me. My family is from Kentucky. On my grandmother's side of the family, they were tobacco farmers. And I remember a couple of summers as a kid going down there with my grandparents and then actually helping do the tobacco harvest and hanging tobacco in the tobacco barn, etc. So it was a livelihood. But you can't deny, though, that the real role of of tobacco is negative. It's addictive. It's bad for your health. It's bad for the health of people around smokers. My mom was a heavy smoker until late in life. And so I think if I could, wave the magic wand, I would have gotten rid of tobacco. Now, tobacco's been around long before, even the arrival of the Europeans to the United States. Tobacco was actually a crop of the Indians here, and we exported it to Europe and etc. and helped spread that around the world. But I think you can't argue against the negative effect that tobacco and particularly cigarettes have had on people's health, lives, medical costs, longevity, all of those things. Number 6, biological or chemical weapons. I already talked about weaponry in the form of the A-bomb, but this is, the inventions, particularly starting in pre-World War I with the invention of things like mustard gas. What is the use of mustard gas other than to harm and kill people? And now, because we've invented it, we've opened up Pandora's box on biological and chemical weapons. Now countries work in this area primarily as a deterrent. Yes, there's all kinds of treaties that say nobody's going to do work in biologicals. I don't know. Call me a skeptic. I probably think that there's still work going on, or the countries that had them before still maintain, some form of small stockpiles to use just in case someone uses it against us first, type of a thing. So it becomes the deterrent approach, similar to what happens with the atomic bomb, right? It's the I'm going to use these, I'm going to have them around just in case, so that person on the other side knows that if they send something against us, we can retaliate just as harshly or worse. So biological, chemical weapons. But again, I think that Pandora's box has been opened. But we live with what we have. The next one is plastic. Now, I'm not negative on plastic, and I think plastic actually has had a lot of positive effects, including in areas of medicine. The certain devices that actually even get inserted into the body now have a dependency on some form of plastic elements to the delivery of healthcare. And so I think there are good things. Now, the early versions of plastic that never degraded, never decomposed, I think are problems. Now, this is a good example, though, of where something was invented, there was an unintended consequence, and then that actually encouraged innovators to go solve that problem. So to go solve the unintended consequence problem in the form of plastic, are there other things that can be invented that could serve the same purpose as plastic, but that are biodegradable? So plastic bags and sandwich wraps and things that seal food. Now, I've shared on the show before with you in the past about our work in Rwanda. We are investors in Lakeside Fish Farm in Rwanda. It's the largest fish farm in Rwanda. And Rwanda, though, has very strict rules about no plastic. You can't bring plastic in. They search your luggage at the Kigali airport to make sure that you're not smuggling in plastic bags. Now, think about it, though. If you're running a fish farm and you're processing fish as a food product for locals to buy, how do you package up fish? How do you give fish to somebody to carry home to cook for a meal that evening? Think about doing that with no plastic. Paper, fish, not a good combination. But there's been a bunch of work done all over the world at trying to create alternative packaging that reduces the need or requirement for plastic. And so I'm all for that. I think that actually is encouraged some interesting innovations. So again, this is innovations that have been done as a result of the unintended consequence, which is all this plastic in the ocean, all this plastic in landfills, plastic that never biodegrades, that has encouraged the innovation of the unintended consequence. Another one that I've had involvement in early on, so I guess I could take part of the heat for this one, and that is computer viruses and malware. Many of you may not know, unless you knew me way back in the early 80s, but I was doing some work around computer viruses, and actually ended up having some engagement with Dr. Fred Cohen, who at that time was at the University of Cincinnati. Fred wrote his PhD thesis on computer viruses. It was one of the early research studies on computer viruses. Fred called me out for my work in some of the work that I had been doing, and I had shared my own work in computer viruses. It stretched back into even when I was in college in the 70s. And in fact, if you're interested in reading about some of that, I'll find some articles and I'll put the links into the show notes. Now, in the early days of computer viruses, it wasn't done as a negative. Early computer viruses, or variations of computer viruses, was basically used to keep track of illegal copying of software. So, in the early days of software, people would make illegal copies, and everybody would just distribute duplicate sets of disks. Publishers were trying to shut down this, so there was some work that was done in the early days of creating little bits of code that would keep track of who was the original licensee of this, and you could keep track of each subsequent copy, each generation of copies that were created of a particular program, and ultimately try to trace it back to the original duplicator. So there was a lot of energy and time spent on this in the early days, like I said, into the late 70s, early 80s, etc. And so I was doing a bunch of work in security and computer security, cybersecurity before it was called cybersecurity, and that included doing some work for certain three-letter agencies here in the U.S. government. And so, but in another case, it was intended for good that got twisted and intended for bad. And now that's turned into malware, and that's turned into all kinds of nastiness on the web. So again, it was intended for good. Nobody thought about the unintended consequence. Fred wrote his research study, which actually taught people how to do viruses. My own work, my own public statements, interviews of me with publications such as the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune, where I talked about the role and benefits and uses of viruses, kind of fed into that excitement. And lo and behold, we kind of gave birth to what I viewed as kind of the nightmare that we are all living through today. The next on my list is the overuse of chemicals in food. I don't know about you, but I've kind of gotten in the habit now of reading the ingredients list in all the foods and that I eat or drink. I guess maybe it comes, with age. We're all trying to find a way to, squeeze out a few more years of life. But when you look at the ingredient list in foods and you look at the number of chemicals that are there, a number of those chemicals are there just for the benefit of the producer. Make the food last a little longer, be more stable during shipment, lower cost to produce the food that tastes the same, but has maybe some unintended health consequence. One example is high fructose corn syrup. In the United States, high fructose corn syrup is a common replacement for sugar. However, in Europe, try to read a bottle of ingredients, whether that's a can of Coke or Pepsi or whatever, where it is illegal to use high fructose corn syrup. They have to use sugar. We've seen a resurgence here in the U.S., for instance, of Coke that is manufactured in Mexico. Mexico does not allow high fructose corn syrup. So there are people who will scour to buy Coke from Mexico that has real sugar in it in order not to consume high fructose corn syrup. And the same in other drinks. And in fact, Pepsi now has come back out with a product called Real Sugar Pepsi that does not have high fructose corn syrup. So I think, the invention and the use of chemistry, which all has a positive intent, has the unintended consequence of businesses, companies finding a way to use chemistry to reduce their cost, to increase their profits in the form of making food last longer, have longer shelf life, those kinds of things. But they have an unintended consequence. In some cases, it's health related for people. So I think if I could wave a magic wand, I would say chemistry, good. The use of chemistry as food byproducts or for that have this unintended consequence of negative health impact, I would say no, can't do that. So again, if I can uninvent a portion of that, I would. And so those are the 9 items. Now, I said at the beginning I was going to talk about 10 items, 10 things that I would uninvent. So what's number 10? You don't get off the hook. I'm looking for you to contribute. What is number 10? I've given you 9. What is number 10? What do you think should be number 10? What one item, one invention, one innovation you would uninvent if you had the magic wand and could make that happen? And add that to the comments for today's show. So again, you're on the hook. I've given you 9. You need to contribute number 10. What is number 10? What invention would you uninvent and add it to the comments? Thanks for the time out of your busy schedule today to join us here on the show. Hope you found today's episode helpful. Remember, I'm asking for you to submit what you think number 10 should be. What invention did I not mention in my list that you would uninvent, and why? Share why would you uninvent that. You can share that in the show notes over at killerinnovations.com. You can post it in the comments wherever you get your podcast. Or if you want, you can hop on over to the Innovators community. That is theinnovators.community. You can hop on over there and post it over there. We have shows. Each show we also post over there. The community, it's free of charge. No charge to become a member of it. And that's where innovators hang out. That's where innovators hang out and talk about their ideas, their stories, get feedback, ask for help, help others. So go over, check that out, and add what you think number 10 should be in today's list. Also, I would ask a favor. The role or the purpose for doing the show, we started the show back in 2005. Yes, we started podcasting before iTunes was around to even support podcasting. So the reason we started this was to pay it forward, and I need your help to pay it forward. And what I need is for you to tell others, for you to pay it forward, the benefit, the information, hopefully the encouragement in your own areas of innovation from the show, for you to share that, pay it forward by sharing information about the show, encouraging others to listen to the show. That is how you help me pay it forward. So please tell others. Also, we're looking for topics for upcoming shows. We're always looking for topics, interesting guests, etc. You can drop me an email over at phil@killerinnovations.com. And I get that email, comes directly to me, bypasses anybody in the middle, filtering it all out. So you can just drop me an email if there's a topic, a question, or a guest who you think you would like to have on the show. And so with that, hopefully, again, you found today's shows helpful. We've got a number of great shows coming up, so subscribe, like, and follow. Follow over also on social media if you want to keep up with where we are traveling. We are on the bus with the mobile studio, so we are out visiting, traveling, meeting up with other innovators. So love to meet up with you if you happen to be, if you see us on the road. But if you want to follow where we're at, where we're heading, you want to hop on over to Instagram. For that, you can actually see pictures of the bus and therefore be able to recognize if you happen to see us on the road. But also, if you know people, we're in the Southeast right now. So if you know of innovators, people that have got interesting stories, would love to hear about that. So follow us on social media. Again, LinkedIn, Instagram, and the Innovators community being the 3 that I am most active on. So with that, Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode, and we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.